Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, my guest today is Philip Kinsella. Philip's been on numerous times over the years. I think I first interviewed him, believe it or not, in 2014 on Blog Talk Radio. That's going back quite a few years, is that?
Yes, a number
I
of
think
years.
I think you was on Blog Talk. I interviewed Paul in 2014 in the early days, and quite a few others. But time flies. You know, all them years have gone by. Uh,
Mm.
you've you've gone on to be a very famous guy now. Um,
Oh, I said to you before, Bob, it doesn't matter if you're the man with the can or the king with the crown. We're all connected, and I can assure you that once anyone places that crown on your head, you'll be certain to know that someone will be there quick enough to lop it off your head. But yeah,
Correcto, por
and
favor. Yes.
yeah, and it's interesting. I think when you're involved in UFO or paranormal research or cryptozoology. I'm not really any expert in cryptozoology. My forte is more on the psychic link and the UFO
Yeah.
phenomena. That's where I've based my operations in terms of theory work. But you do go through a process of change, of transmutation. If I take myself back to when I was a young lad, and of course, I had always a vested interest within UFOs, and that
Yeah.
doesn't go against you, which most of the media um, you know, say that it's because you're interested in Doctor Who or science fiction. In the early days, they wrote up in the newspapers. That's why they had these experiences. And of course, so there's so much going against you. But now we're realizing, back in the day when I was younger, the physical nuts and bolts elements with regards to ufology now comes into question. The science, I know that some famous person said an impossible science. And I believe that that is true compared to where we are at this present moment of time, because the way that we have adopted our science is very restricted. And this also brings into the fray human consciousness and the
Mm.
subjugation of human consciousness. We only have to look back in the day of the ruling of the churches. This is no disrespect to those at present, but those in the past, most definitely. If anyone was using their mind outside the box, so to speak, then they were considered a heretic and then burnt or drowned. And of course, this created great fear across the world because anyone dared not think outside the box. And so when you look back in the day, especially not only within our human evolution, but also as you as an individual, how things have changed for you and me and for everyone else in the way that things have come forward. If you'd said to me back in the day, let's connect psychic phenomena with UFOs, most people would have laughed. And I did that, yeah, back in 1996 with a article called "Spirits in the Material World," which dealt with the Greys and possible theoretical ideas surrounding the abduction hypothesis. So that was an area that most people rejected, and now, of course, we're hearing a lot of people, researchers, discussing it or bringing it into their line of research, so to speak. So it is quite interesting, yes.
It is, yeah. Let's talk about your new book. What's that? The Internal Avatar, UFOs, God, and the Simulation. A lot of people say, what's the avatar then?
Well, if I may boast, there is the book, and that is the book, a beautiful book, and the illustrations were done by Curtis Sopal, a Canadian artist, and the forward by Joshua Cutchin. My co-author, Chris John May, is a fabulous guy. He's an artist, an author, photographer, a poet, you name it, he's it, and
Yeah.
a very gentle soul. And we had been in a pub with another friend, and I wasn't drinking spirits, by the way, the real
Yeah.
spirits. And he mentioned to me about the avatar, and I thought, I wonder if we could possibly write a book. And that was the result of that conversation in a pub. And the avatar itself is interesting. So the Eternal Avatar, which Chris and I co-authored together, it was a wonderful project. We worked so well together as a team. And we explored his memory of his incarnation coming into this world. So let me just explain. First of all, I have been involved in UFO research, which I am still today, on a theoretical level. I've had a number of UFO sightings, close up and personal, not flashing lights in the sky, and also a major abduction that occurred in the winter of 1989. But on top of that, I also was involved in the Rendlesham research, if I may say that.
Yeah.
And that resulted in a book called Sky Crash Throughout Time, which I co-authored with the amazing Brenda Butler, who was the original author to Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy, co-authored with Dot Street and Jenny Randalls, that had opened the can of worms with regards to the Rendlesham UFO event. And during that period, when I've been researching there, we'd also summoned a UFO. Me, my twin brother Ronald, and friend Susan, on the 8th of June 1998. And that happened at 10:15 at night within the farmer's field and directly opposite the forest, Rendlesham Forest, well, within the vicinity, of course, the grounds.
Yeah.
So it's been an extraordinary journey. So the psychic department kicked in when my maternal grandmother passed. And it was her passing which stimulated me to look into this, because we had just gone to see her in a Somerset hospital a week before. She was very sadly dying of cancer. And I was back home here in Bedford, Kempston, Bedford, and I woke up early in the morning and I started to cry and I was really upset. And then my grandma's voice came in my head, as clear as day, in here. Why are you crying? Why are you crying? They were her exact words. She repeated it twice. She wasn't admonishing me. She was never like that, but she was more annoyed. And then, of course, I saw a scene in my head of her holding me and my twin brother's babies. There was a silence. The phone rang. She passed. And then I went to go and see a medium. And she wiped the floor with me because she was a brilliant medium that worked for the FBI in America on cold soul cases. That is to say that the police couldn't find bodies and they'd bring a sensitive, or they're called medium, in to help them track the body. So with Chris said about the avatar. And I thought, yes. And people will say, what is an avatar? Bar from the film, The Avatar. The avatar in Hindu means that an elevated soul or a master has come from its journey from the other side and incarnated briefly into human form and bringing wonderful messages and gifts to the world. And we see this displayed within certain deities, most notably Allah, Christ, Jesus Christ, these figures that kind of like walked our world. And we thought, well, we're all avatars, to be honest with you. The question of life after death is something that really propelled and fascinated us, myself and Chris, in terms of the investigations. And I thought, well, if we come from another plane of reality, let's explore that, because most people believe that you live and die and that's it. But we know, and this is nothing new here, what I'm about to say here, we know about near-death experience studies and, of course, out-of-body experiences, which proves that there is a secondary body surrounding the material body that seems to survive death, or at least extending its life force beyond this material matrix. So the avatar. So we look at heaven and earth, but it's more than just heaven and earth, because in religious ideologies, most people have been led to believe that it is just earth and heaven, that is it. But if you go back to the ancient times, if you look, giving an example which we've addressed, the ancient Egyptians, and their incredible technology, their idea of the star system was very different from the way that scholars see them today. Those pyramids were energy centers, and of course, as some other authors discovered, the central shafts to the pyramid of Cheops was some kind of initiation chamber that sent the soul of the deceased, most notably a king, a pharaoh, to the Orion star system. So they obviously understood that there was more about us in terms of our physicality that went beyond their material realm, because most of their journey was about the afterlife, although their description of it is very different from the way we see it. So Chris, John Mays, remembers his incarnation coming into the womb, which is very rare, because in a lot of documented cases, people recall past lives through regression, or some not so. I remembered past lives without being regressed. And his journey was quite spectacular. So this is where the idea of the book the eternal avatar came in, and the book is also a tool to help other people realize that within this dark and somewhat dismal world that we're living in at the moment, and I think that's always been the case, Bob, is that there is hope that you are more than the sum total of what you represent within this biological processing, this function, this temporary existence, so to speak. So, trying to cram it all in a nutshell is quite difficult, but it is a different book that explores the sovereignty of the soul and other dimensions of reality, and deities such as Thoth, and taking into account the incarnation and reincarnation process. And just to finish off here with a long answer to your short question, Bob, is that Thoth was interesting because he was an Egyptian deity that didn't come through the normal processing of incarnation, as in terms of incubation, as in pregnancy. He came from light, and most people assumed that he was an extraterrestrial that held vast knowledge, the keeper of knowledge, the writer, the scribe. He was also a very powerful entity. So we look at these areas, and that's what made us write the book, so to speak. So it's very different from your normal near-death experience book.
I know it is. I know it is. Because I was going to ask you that. What is the author's views on God in the context of simulated reality? How does this compare with more traditional religion or spiritual views?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. And of course, we don't want to upset the apple cart, but there again, we do. If you have a view or an opinion, most people are offended by that. But look, let me explain something, and I'll say this quite clear. I do not have the answers. All we have is theory, and most of that theory is based upon experience, individual experience. It's interesting when you talk about the Matrix, Bob. I absolutely agree with you there, and the simulation program, and of God. What is God? That is the big question. Well, I can assure you that he's not a man with a beard. Why does it have to be a man with a beard? But it's interesting, I think, that when many people who are tied to their religious ideologies, their faiths, their beliefs, which are important constructs for them, let me make that clear also, as long as their beliefs do not destroy or harm or control people, those constructs, I believe, are what they take when they pass over. And sure, to begin with, they will see this within their journey from passing from the physical to the etheric world, the astral plane, so to speak. This will be there to perhaps comfort them, to bring them into that journey very gently. God, we don't know. We believe it's some form of omnipresent energy, consciousness that far exceeds us. There has even been talk that it's some kind of advanced computer. I know that's stretching the bounds beyond possibility, but not just any ordinary computer that we think of in terms of our computers with microchips. We could be looking at something that's organic in nature, that's semi-organic, that is also has components of AI, so to speak, or something like this. But my understanding personally is that the energy of what we call God is something that we are all part of, that we're all connected to this force. And I've wondered about the purpose of life, of why we're here, why we go through this. And this is going to open up a whole can of worms here, because when you explore history as we have, the elevated masters like Christ had to be destroyed by certain authorities that found these elevated souls as a danger. Obviously, Christ, giving one example, he incarnated into our form to bring a message that has been distorted. And if you go back into the past, you'll discover that the so-called Bible, the books that most people hold within their temples, churches, synagogues, wherever, are distortions from the original codices from the past, which tells a very different story. So it appears to me that, and it's possible, that there is still a darker force that is mentioned in those ancient codices that's still here and remains in the background. And this is why there has been this need or this subjugation of that true knowledge to bring to the masses, because the human, well, we've not really been allowed to evolve. We've always been servants to the system. That's never changed. And I always joke and say, well, we're still a slave race, if not a modern one. Nothing's really changed, and most people are horrified. And if you think about it, that is true. You're born into this world, you're educated by a system that tells you what is right, what is wrong, what is real, what is not. And you're programmed, this way, and then you have to go and get a job. You have to pay your taxes, which are eye-wateringly high. Don't ask any questions, and then die. And the loop carries on, yeah? So for a lot of people, they're like, hang on just a minute, there's something seriously wrong here. And to finish off this question, and I can't answer all of it here because I don't want to, your line of questions are wonderful, but why is it, there are 3 areas, why is it that within 3 areas surrounding the world of what we call the paranormal are, debated and questioned and no clarity brought to them? One of them is creation. The system, and I've said this before with Chris on many shows, the system itself loves faith. It loves it because there's no scientific conviction to prove otherwise. Life after death is always kind of like held in the balance. You see it on social media sometimes. Yes, there's life after death. Then no, there's no life after death. And this argument continues. And then the UFO Department of Investigations. Oh, well, well, what does that tell you? And this shows us clearly that even the Pentagon and those higher officers, not just generals or colonels, but higher in command have come forward to try to bring clarity to the general public, but the system won't have it. So if you tie those 3 together, this is going to open up something that most people stop and say, hang on a minute, we've literally been lied to by the system that we're supposed to believe in, right? Yeah. So what's going on, and why are we no nearer in truly establishing our true sovereignty and what's going on around us? So this is also included in the eternal avatar.
Yeah.
And also about the Matrix, just to mention here, I forgot to add this in, Bob. The Matrix itself is interesting. And we've got to remember that as human beings, we have a brain which is merely a conduit. It's literally a portal. The mind consciousness is separate from the brain. And we are conditioned in this life. But the system we serve is scared because it knows that each and every one of us are amazing, brilliant, eternal avatars, that we have the ability to think for ourselves. But we are continuously drowned by their noise, by their fear, by their control, by propaganda. So everything's always loud and confusing. Yeah. But each and every one of us has the ability to open up our minds and consciousness to other areas of investigations in terms of other planes of reality, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, clairvoyance, healing, these areas that the system wants closed and shut through control. And this opens up a huge area of debate, exciting debate, to tell us that we are not the only ones. And just to finish off here, what's really annoying, again with UFOs, look at the space that we're in. You say to someone, Earth is the only planet with intelligence, really. And you see just how big the space is that we're in. We don't know if there's an edge, or if it's eternal, or even if some scientists have used the donut hypothesis, it's still got to have some kind of edge to it, right? We're looking at black holes. The wonderful, amazing Professor Stephen Hawkins, CBE, had created new areas with regards to research into the terms of the density of the black hole and where that goes, what's going on there. So, it's very naive for us to say, oh, no, we're the only intelligent life forms. And if there is life out there, then it's too far away for us to worry about. But recently, the Atlas, the new discovery of that object, the third one, I believe, that's going to slingshot through our system in December. Oh, dear Lord, everyone's on the bandwagon, the normal scientific circles. No, it's just an asteroid. It's just a comet. It's nothing to... But look, there's no smoke without fire, is there?
Exactly. 'Cause, What moral or ethical implications follow from believing we live in a simulation? Does it change how we treat others or how we live?
That is a very good question as well. Well, our morals are different from other people's, and I've always, as Chris has, and many other people that are involved in this, I hate the word spiritual. It sounds so Victorian.
Yeah.
It studies in consciousness. You know, you're a vessel, and you know what is right and what is wrong. And what's interesting is that in terms of what you do within this life, it's all down to you. You are the author, you are the architect. And this is just a simulation, right? This isn't real because when we die, our consciousness supersedes the material plane. And that's interesting because we must have some kind of avatar from one body to the next. In the film, The Avatar, the humans actually had to send their consciousness into one of the alien bodies for them to exist within their environment or within their world. And that was a very good idea. I think that was an amazing concept of shifting from one plane of reality to another. And so I believe that happens with us. Whether or not we attain light form is interesting because light is energy. If you go into quantum mechanics, quantum theory, you'll find that light creates. And that is the truth through vibration and going into quantum within the particles and the atomic
Yeah.
structure of what keeps everything together. But yes, I believe that your actions determine outcomes. And I'm not saying there's a judgment because I think and believe that when we pass over from this matrix onto what we call the other side, that you yourself will see within the mirror of your consciousness of how you've made other people feel. So like the Egyptians with their, just giving a basic example, with their scales of justice, as it were, the feather to the heart. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that. So there is some kind of truth in this, but I don't feel it's like as bad as people make out. I think that people tend to create their own hell. They create it here on Earth, and perhaps they'll be matched by that vibration when they pass over. But the way I'm seeing it is that we have a sense of humor. Earth is hell, right? I mean, who would want to come down here?
Exactly. Who would?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I always thought that as a kid. Why am I here? What am I? Where have I come from? And people say you come from the womb, and it's like, yeah, I understand that, but people aren't asking the questions. They never did. Bob, back in the day, it was all hush hush and behind curtains, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But the interesting theory of why we're here, and again, that goes back perhaps to antediluvian cultures where you talked of God. Yes, I understand that. But I had a firm interest within the Gnostic texts, which tells a very different story and a very detailed story, and far different from the Christian or the Hebrew texts that were discovered. So there's a lot more within the Gnostic texts, which I think explains more about the creation of man and God, but to gods. And of course, the descent and fall of man. If you go back into the heyday, the story is that one of the goddesses, the Aeons, angel, that separated from the one that we call God, there were many of them, she took a further descent and then created matter. And because she defied the one, and she gave immaculate conception to Yaldabaoth, and Yaldabaoth is what people call Satan. And we're not talking about a man in a red costume with horns and a pitchfork, please. You've got to understand that a lot of this thought was created by high priests back in the day. But Yaldabaoth was created, which had been a prince that created the Archons. And it was the Archons who, through the story, created human, the Adama and Eve, through a process of genetic experimentation because they wanted a workforce. And they tried many models of the human, and the perfect model was Adam and Eve, and they weren't meant to reproduce. But then, of course, the scientists allowed them to, and of course, this is what caused all the problems for them because they were warring gods. So what we're doing today is we're creating life, and I'm sure that behind closed doors they have replicated or they've created human beings or type of humans, and they would probably look upon us as their gods. And I always remember the film Blade Runner. The film Blade Runner was based on a story by Philip K. Dick, a very famous science fiction author, an amazing writer. And the original title of that book was called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And in Blade Runner, there were a number of clones that had been made, and they wanted to question if they had immortality. And of course, this led them in the film to Dr. Aldrin Tyrell, who met a very nasty ending with one of the chief clones. But the idea was there, you see, that these clones were looking at the humans as the gods, so to speak. So I believe that when we're looking in essence of what we represent, take away the kind of mythology that, you know, a wispy man in a beard, and then suddenly Adam and Eve appeared out of the oven, or they were baked and set and then walked to the earth and tricked by a serpent of all things. And then, of course, we go to this mess that we're in at the moment. So again, it's interesting that the system we serve continues to promote this false narrative. Not all of it, but the major parts of it are false. In biblical times, UFOs were seen. You know, Christ raised the dead. I don't believe he raised them physically. I believe that he was using clairvoyance. He could heal. And Christ came from a priesthood initiated by high adepts. Not just the airy-fairy version that we're told today. So he was seen as a danger because he was awakening his people to the fact that it wasn't all about, you know, racial discrimination, although most of the Bible would put that in there, because most people love one another. All they want is everyone to get on with their lives and work together as a unity, as a structured system. But there was a lot more to that. And that was interesting because I believe that he came, just one of them that had come. There were many others, not just Christ, but he had come to give a warning, a message to the people to say, you don't have to worry about this because you are from the divine. You may have been created by gods. But you as humans have a spark of divinity. You can get back. And, you know, being good, being gracious, being kind, being understanding to your fellow human beings, may be the answer to get back there, you know, instead of being trapped in this matrix that these gods have created that has held all of us humans in. Now, I know that David Icke has mentioned most of this in his books, and a respected figurehead. I saw him talk in Luton a few years ago. A brilliant talk. He's a good speaker. And, you know, you can agree or disagree, which most people do. And people say, no, Philip, you've got it all wrong. Well, this is the other problem. The other big problem is that everyone has an opinion and they're trying to squeeze someone else's centralized belief system into their box. It's not going to work. It's an individual journey. It's how you consciously see your world and how you view it. Your structured belief systems are important to you. And that's why when people come for readings, the ladies' husbands don't believe. I say to them, it doesn't matter. They've left them at home, obviously. They don't normally come to the readings. And I say, it doesn't matter. You know, that is absolutely fine with me. So, I believe that there is a matrix, that this is merely a hologram, because we can escape it temporarily through near-death experiences in unfortunate cases, but a lot of the time through out-of-body experiences and remote viewing. You know, these incredible areas, many areas. Shamanism, they were able to escape the body. And I will tell you that Chris, as a baby, he would try to get himself out of his body because if he banged his back against the wall in a rhythmic fashion, he could feel himself coming out of his body. And of course, as a young baby, the soul, or the spirit rather, is not fully attached to the biological suit until the age of probably around about 3, 4, and then 6 or 7, where then immersed within this material world. So that's where our problems really begin.
I like that. How are the unexplained phenomena, e.g. UFOs, angels and miracles, used as evidence for something beyond ordinary? Are they related as challenges to the faith of religion?
Yes, you see, this is the thing. Here's the thing. Religion only believes, or most of them, that the human is the only model, the only construct, the only link to the Godhead, nothing else. And I have to disagree there, because all of nature, all of life is a spark of this awareness, sometimes on low levels, sometimes on high levels. The UFOs were clearly reported back in in the day. Of course, their language was very different from ours. They couldn't say, oh, there's a UFO, look at that. They would see them as miracles, as signs. And of course, we have to understand that most of the cultures in antediluvian times were based primarily on structured belief systems, religions, that type of thing. So they would see them as signs or messages, and it depends on how you interpret them. So it is a little bit of muddy waters when we're dealing with that in terms of religion and how religion denies that. But look what happened with one of the popes. He said he would welcome extraterrestrials. He would even baptize them because it was getting too close for comfort in terms of the UFO acknowledgement. So, of course, they would have to change their tune. Hypocritical, totally hypocritical, and as I see it anyway, because I believe that intelligences have been here for a very long time, and not necessarily from other planets, perhaps interdimensionally or on ultra-terrestrial levels of awareness. We don't know. And I believe that a large faction of them could be here, very much here on this planet, and are with us already. When I spoke to Dr. David Jacobs many years ago, he said to me that they're walking among us. You wouldn't even recognize them. And I believe that. I really did believe that. So, but you've got to also understand that trying to structure the phenomena is nigh impossible because it comes with so many levels of high strangeness. It literally does. It's really hard as a researcher. Paul Sinclair knows, many other good researchers know that when these levels come in, they present high strangeness and very hard for us to locate or pinpoint exactly what's going on. We have some ideas about certain locations around the world that promote these levels of high strangeness, and we can only base most of those assumptions upon theoretical work. That's all. But I believe that this here, consciousness has a part to play in that, and these other alternative dimensions of reality will integrate with you on a personal level and perhaps show themselves in a way that you translate that will be very different from someone else's interaction with this so-called unknown phenomena, so to speak. But as I said to you before, Bob, most people have it all worked out. I don't. And even though I've had pretty scary experiences, really, I'm still none the wiser. But I will say to you that it has opened up a lot more, something inside on a deeper level of the human psyche, but it's kind of like a silent language, almost like an acknowledgement or a knowing or a feeling that there is a lot more to this. And this is why the system we serve is so frightened to reveal the truth, because that truth will go against the foundations of their structured drip feeding rubbish that they've been feeding to the public about UFOs and, in Paul's case, werewolves and psychic phenomena. It will go against all of those principles, and there'll be questions. And this is why I believe that the system we serve may understand a little bit more than what we do, and that they do not want a vast proportion of the public to know what that is. So, it is very interesting when looking into those areas, not just religion. And this is the problem in our world, not just about UFOs, but religion causes so many problems because it's restricted, it's restrained, it has no room for growth or development. So spiritually, they're in an emotional cul-de-sac, a spiritual cul-de-sac. They can't move because people want answers, and the religion will say, just have faith, have faith. That's not good enough. We need more in terms of content to find out what happened in the past and where we really came from.
Yeah, that's true. Just a quick question. This is from Steph in the chat room. Question for Philip. What is your opinion on orbs that interact with us? The ones seen with the naked eye. Many thanks.
Yes, and I don't profess to know everything, but I know exactly what Steph is talking about. As a medium translator, I've seen them not just through peripheral vision, but direct straight line of sight. They come in
Yeah.
different colors. They're very bright. Some are silver, some are blue, some are white, some are yellow. And one even presented itself really shockingly to me in broad daylight when I've been sitting with my brother as an egg with three lines in it. So we're not sure. Most mediums will tell you what it is and where they come from. Well, we don't know. And it's interesting that, when I'm doing readings for people, sometimes they turn up around someone, but there's no form of communication. In fact, the mediumship that I do is evidence based. So I bring the information through, and I'm not getting anything from those lights, so to speak. So whether or not the orbs are some kind of energy being built from the other side, rather like the quantum, if those that cross over are in what we call the quantum realm, the field of potentiality, the infinite world of possibilities, is interesting. All the lights are some kind of indication that those souls are elevated in nature on some level. So we're not really sure, but I do know that most people that have been able and lucky enough to capture them on film have actually been able to see faces in them. Sometimes dogs, babies, faces. So it's interesting a theory to speculate that they are interdimensional in nature. And yeah, they don't seem to harm me. They can even turn up when I'm on my own. I can see them. Sometimes there's two silver lights together. And I'm always saying, can I have some more? But I get absolutely nothing. I always joke and say, what a good medium you are, because, they're not even communicating with you. But we have to understand that when we're dealing with the topic of the afterlife or interdimensional contact, that could even be extraterrestrials, but they are operating on a completely different frequency from us. I mean, if you take your mobile phone, for instance, as the human body, or the brain, we'll get this the brain, the biological part.
Yeah.
That is not that's not the real part. The real part is the signal that's coming in, the consciousness that hits that, like a signal to your phone, and then your phone is merely a translator, recorder, and receiver. So this is just an in-betweener, like we are within time and space, and the signal you can't see carries information that we can't understand until it hits the translator. So it's possible that when they try to initiate any form of contact, that it will have to come in some form of symbology because our language is restricted. And I have seen the other side on two occasions, but I also get psychic residue. And this is interesting. And the residue seems to open up a lot more that connects with a lot more. It's like an eternal moment, a feeling. C.S. Lewis called those moments of joy. He didn't know what they were, but I guess we all have them. So yeah, it is interesting. And if a scientist in America doesn't know what they are, then I don't. But we can theorize. There are several theories that one of them must at least be true.
Yeah, because Steph was asking, she said, I'm asking, as 8 weeks ago, I witnessed one in my bedroom. I looked up and it was directly at my eye level. As soon as I caught sight of it, it shot off to the left.
Yes.
And it just fizzled out.
Yes, they do. You can't capture them because they're on a completely different energy exchange than we are. Rather, you can't catch your signals to your mobile phone network system. But it is fascinating, and of course, we try to find meaning of them from them. And I think that's up to you as the individual. How are you feeling? What's going on in your life? Any of these things. So I'm not clutching at straws here. What I would like to do, not just with light phenomena from the spirit world, but also the greys, for instance. I'd like to, talk to them in a level where we can contact and be in control and say, what's your problem? What is this all about? So
Exactly.
sense of humor with it, but yeah, it's interesting. But
Yeah. A question from Rebecca. What are your theories on shadow people, the very black figures that cause instant fear before they even see them?
Yes, well, I have not seen a shadow person, but I've heard a lot about them, and they do seem to appear when a lot of grief or fear has been generated within a certain environment. Certainly, when someone's died, they do carry a lot of fear, and I think this is the energy exchange that they release. So, our understanding of the other side is that there are alternative levels. You have lower levels, you have higher levels. And the astral planes is another area also of great interest where what you take in is generated within those astral planes. Remember, here as biological units with a brain, our consciousness is limited. It's limited within its flow of centralized awareness. So we're recording everything in this life. And I believe that the recordings of our life is not stored within the brain, but within what is called the second body, the astral body. And that's interesting. So I believe that these shadow people could be entities that have lost their divinity. They have probably traversed so low to those lower planes that the only way that they can understand how to exist is through fear. And we also, generate energy, and they'll be drawn to that energy, and perhaps they feed from that energy of fear. Because this is the big question in terms of the paranormal. Normally in cases of UFOs, and I'm not talking about those love and light cases. Even one lady was jumping on up without a spacesuit on the moon with Grace and having a great time. Please don't insult my intelligence here. But a lot of the times, these abductions, these experiences with Sasquatch or even the werewolf dogman, poltergeist, they carry a lot of fear-generated encounters. So wondering whether or not this phenomena feeds from that energy, because it gives them the energy to survive and carry on, because they perhaps lost that divine spark that you and I and Bob and many other people around, well, nearly all of us have. It depends on the level of their psyche. These shadow people could be the vestiges of what they had been in human form and degraded, devolved, or gone through a process of spiritual devolution. We don't know. But I do know one thing, in answer to your question. It's kind of scary. I do know a good friend, a dear friend, I won't go into detail, who had witnessed one of these, and he's a sound guy. And let me tell you, the fear that he experienced didn't leave him for at least a week, and his wife. So they're kind of scary. So, but there again, you're a spiritual entity, you can ward them off. If you're happy as Larry, they tend to go away because they don't have to deal with that energy that's reversed in terms of happiness, love, and light. They don't have to deal with it.
Very interesting that was. How does the book handle evidence versus belief? Is there a risk of forcing evidence to fit a preset?
Yeah, I think that most theories are just theories, and I have never, even in this book here, I'll just show you, which has been re-released, Terrestrial Trespassers.
Oh, yeah.
And that's introductions by Pierce Saback and James Thompson, and forward by the amazing, wonderful Peter Robbins. I get attacked from that because people say, no, you've got it wrong. And I'm like, well, maybe I have got it wrong, but I haven't stated for a fact that this is how I see it. We're using theoretical models. The Greys are interesting. And one of the areas I looked at with regards to them was about the cloning issue. This came in 1996. If a part or a fraction of them are clones, then if you look at our human species, what are they working towards? This system, transhumanism. And that's frightening, right? Because transhumanism is basically my idea of becoming cyberized, rather like a Cyberman, and extinguishing that part of the God force that you hold in you. So if that's extinguished, does this mean theoretically that you can't get back to source? So are the Greys, and through their self-replication program, have they found a species that can reproduce something that they cannot? And this is why that they have, and this was my work back in 1996 published theoretically in an article that was praised, and I've got to take credit for that, I'm sorry, but are they trying to reproduce or recreate a hybrid, a species that is able to incarnate on another level of reality and also bring the manufactured spark from them into a new body? It goes into a lot more detail. We also offer other theories as well to whether or not the Greys are from the lower astral planes and they're trying to slingshot themselves into our physical reality, or that is there the possibility that they are our geneticists, that they had somehow been responsible for our creation. I find it hard to believe because the Greys, when they instigate their abduction program and their investigations, is quite crude. They have no real understanding of empathy or link with the individual, and they're looking for something. They're looking for something that goes beyond the biological, and that's interesting. So if there are makers, our gods, they would know that anyway.
Yeah. What do you think the purpose would be of creating a simulated universe? What might the reasons be for the creator?
Well, I don't think it's as much the creator that had created that. The creator doesn't mind, well, within the polarities of positive or negative, yin and yang, right and wrong, hot and cold. We have to have these polarities. The one just allows, because it's eternal, for us to do what we're doing. I think it's us that have created the problems. Through the simulation program, it's possible that these gods of old had somehow trapped themselves within the material realm, because we have to understand that we are a composite of both material and non-material, rather like a machine that has electricity or a device that has a battery. I'm not saying that we're batteries or machines, but in the biological sense, I believe that we've been caught within this matrix. I think the original idea was that Earth was meant to be a new experiment, the Garden of Eden, so to speak. But I've always seen it as some other force has corrupted it and destroyed the original path. Now, I don't think that God can get involved, because God, or the goddess, or the God source is so far removed from us in the physical sense. We work through that God force, I believe. And I believe it links with every one of us to some degree. Certainly, maybe not those gods that had physically created us in terms of Genesis, and taking out the Darwin's theory of evolution, which is slightly flawed, because if we had evolved from the apes, we've still got them. And as humans, we're not adapted very well to this environment, are we? We shy from our very own sun. We don't have enough hair on our body to protect us from the elements. What is that telling you? That we could be a part fusion of mammal and extraterrestrial intelligence with that spark of divinity in us. So it could be possible that there's a war, and it's been going on here for a very long time, uncomfortable to talk about. And this is all the humans have been dealing with: is war, destruction, hatred, divide. But at the hands of those at the top, those echelons that govern from the top. Isn't it interesting that the pattern keeps repeating over and over and over again? And history is to be wiped, completely subjugated, changed, altered, and a preferred narrative that does not take us to the truth is then administered. So we can see that there's a lot of lies within academia, and maybe not from them, but the top notch that are stripping this down to them, to say, don't go down that road, don't talk about that. If any scientist or archaeologist, whoever they are, digs something up, finds something, and it distorts that carefully planned model, God help them, because you don't have to listen or believe me. You do your own research, especially within the evolution of man, and how some scientists, some archaeologists have dug up something that contradicts the very nature, the very foundations of our Genesis. And they're like, nope, you don't have a job anymore if you talk. You've got to stay in line with what we've uncovered. So it's a bit of a messy story. But what does it tell you? It's telling you that there's a problem. And this is what people like you, me, and many others are digging up, or excuse the pun, trying to dig up.
Hey, Philip, do you think we are part alien? Do you think God was an alien?
Well, I think to us God would be an alien, because we put him or her or it as a force that cannot be touched, cannot be seen. It has many faces, it has many guises. We don't know. But that did make me laugh. I mean, if we were in the presence of the divine, there'd be no question, because a lot of people who experience near-death experiences, as I have, I didn't see God, and I didn't go down a tunnel. I didn't see a light. I was just there in a world that I was familiar with, and it was incredible. So it's possible that many humans here are part alien, because we hear of hybrids. I also have to boast and say I met the lovely Barbara Lamb in Phoenix, Arizona, and she was with a group of hybrids. And I understand now their concerns and how they feel, because a lot of people don't feel like they belong on this planet. And that could be because the sovereignty of their soul. And remember, going back to saying about the religious sectors just see earth and heaven as the two systems backwards and forwards. No, I believe that there are other systems of reality. We could have incarnated from other systems, the Orion system, the Draco system, Sirius system, it doesn't matter. And this is why I think a lot of people, hybrids, star seeds, are waking up and realizing this isn't my world. And that was presented to me very quickly. That was presented to me in a very extraordinary case that I covered that was actually given to me by Brenda Butler, the co-author to Sky Crash. She had
Oh, yeah.
she had some incredible documentation, and a lot of the information that she had went beyond her book Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy that was co-authored with Jenny Randles and Dot Street. And of course, yes, so I absolutely firmly believe that you, me, and many other people are not necessarily from heaven and where God's, reigning supreme. I believe the God force allows us to do what we're doing by creating. And because we're eternal, we are immortal beyond this flesh. It's how we deal with it, how we evolve, how we create, because we're all co-creators. Some people are the destroyers. Then we have the co-creators as well. So that's an interesting question.
Yeah. I just thought I'd put that one in.
Yes, well, I can assure you, Bob, that when I cross to the other side again, this time I'm definitely going to ask for a refund and ask them just what the hell was that all about, please, because I haven't a clue. We have some ideas, of course.
Oh, yeah. If UFOs are part of the simulation, what alternative explanations might exist? Hallucinations, misunderstanding, or natural phenomena?
I think going back into the Dare Blue book, Project Blue book, which was quite questionable, that the American military set into place, and the wonderful Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who had got long, yes. So, in terms of misidentification, atmospheric distortions, all of these things are always brought up. Even the most ridiculous assumptions. When you are in the presence of what we call a UFO or some kind of psychic phenomena, because your system is screaming out, this is not from here. It's an incredible experience as well, too. I'm not talking about the abduction back in 1989, but certainly when you're involved. So this is telling us that perhaps these forces are coming into this matrix. They're probably interested in it.
Yeah.
Or they're very interested to see what's going on with us. I've had people tell me that it's us coming back from the future. I'm not dismissing that, that we are a genetic experiment that's come into human form. It's another area of consideration that's trying to evolve within and from the one, creating a new genus that is able to be independent physically. But I believe myself personally that the human experiment has failed. I think something's gone wrong because everything else in the paranormal is able to communicate from mind to mind. The humans normally can't. And most people are suspicious about what the other person's thinking or feeling. And this is why the system we serve is also fearful, because it wants to know and plug you in. So I believe that it's possible that if we are in a simulation, that alternative dimensions of reality are able to pierce this reality. It reminded me a bit of the Hunger Games. When the scientists generated kind of like a matrix for the certain districts, and they would bring in those abhorrent monsters when they generated them, didn't they? And they became real, and they were created by scientists in a laboratory. So that makes me think sometimes about that. It's quite interesting theory, I think, there.
But it's an interesting book. This new book you've written.
Yes.
How's it being viewed?
Well, I think to begin with, most people are a little bit curious about it because they're like, well, what is an avatar? And I think most people miss that within the film, the avatar, where it's about the consciousness that elects to come into a body, incarnate temporarily. And it's possible that we're doing that because Chris remembers his incarnation coming in through space, as it were, and everything became larger. And he was told from those people that he'd left that it was a decision, a choice that he had to make to come into this world to become a better and bigger version of himself. But then, of course, he felt the fears was coming in because everything was being squeezed out of him. His awareness, his spatial awareness, his memories were all being squeezed out of him as he came in. So we have what they call memory wipe. It doesn't mean to say that our memories are no longer attainable. I think that happens when we return back to where we come from. So we look at heaven again. I don't believe that we all go to the same place. We all hang out in the same pub on the other side. Again, a sense of humor there. I believe that we gravitate to other systems of reality. And this is why the stars, I have to say this very quickly here, the star systems are very interesting. And astrology, and I mean the real astrology, when you start looking at what they're telling you and how that has influenced a lot of the way that we have evolved and have been restricted by that forbidden knowledge the system doesn't want us to know about. So the book deals with you finding your greatness, understanding about the incarnation, reincarnation process. There is about why we could be here, what's going on, also acknowledging the darker realm that is here, that we believe has been here for a long time, and we have to acknowledge that, because if we don't understand anything about that, how the hell are we able to protect ourselves from that force? And of course, psychic phenomena, psychic weaponry, psychic, disruptions from those at the top, and how to protect yourself. But it's a book, a beautiful book that's got, Chris has done the most amazing poems in there with each chapter. And it's also beautifully illustrated. It's got some illustrations in there as well too. So when we look at the book and we look at the idea of survival beyond this realm, because to us it is most important. What is the point? What is the point if we just come here and we live and die? We lose those we love, and on a empathic level, that tears you to pieces. Because you don't understand that empathic, that love, that emotional connection has gone, and the system carries on coldly, and you're like, hang on just a minute. And I had to stop and ask myself, well, am I weird? Am I wired differently? Or are the people asking these questions? Are they looking at this? But most of them just get tied in that loop. And I understand that. I respect that. But the important thing is, what are we? Where do we come from? Who created us? Where are we going? What is the point to all of this? That is the main question. What is the point to our genesis? And I believe that it's possible that the system has some of those answers, and they're holding it back from us. And I think humanity is going through another change, another time of revelation. And this time we have to stay awake. We cannot go back to sleep. We have to remain awake and fight this evil, and fight this force which has continuously lied to us, dominated us, subjugated us, tricked us, led us down the garden path. No, I'm not having it. Like many researchers, this is why there's many brilliant researchers out there within their very departments of study, chipping away and trying to find that truth. And that is the most glorious, wonderful part to all of this, which is truth and integrity. That is what we deal with.
Wonderful, that is wonderful. So where can people find your book, your new book?
Oh yeah, they can order the book from any good bookshops. It's also available in Barnes and Noble and on Amazon, one of the biggest selling areas, which is easy for anyone to say, oh, we go down to Woolworth or WH Smith or somewhere. No, it's Amazon. You can get it from there, and it's published as a Kindle, paperback and hardback, and it will soon be coming out as an audio book as well too. So it will come out, because a lot of people do also like audio, and of course,
of course they do. What are you looking into next after this book?
Well, I'm actually now working on a new book, which explores those three questions in more detail: creation, life after death, and UFOs. And I think I've taken a bit off more than I can chew, but I'm going to get this project done. So I'm started working on that to ask the penultimate question about your importance, your sovereignty, your right. And of course, I always say, if you have a belief in yourself, please believe in that. You can do it. You can do anything, because this up here is a modulator, is a transmitter, and can open up to other dimensions of reality. So yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, it's been very interesting subject tonight. Really enthralled in it, and you learn something every day as well in life.
Oh, I do as well, and at least I was able to let you get a word in edgeways within the interview. I get carried away. I'm so excited with it all.
Yeah, but it's great. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yes, thank you so much, and it's been an honour to be on your show,
Thank you.
and all those wonderful souls out there. Never be belittled by anyone. Wherever you are just
True.
as important as anyone else. As I said,
Exactly. Exactly.
But thank you.
Right. My guest on Friday is a good friend of yours and mine, Peter Robbins, on
Oh
Friday.
yes, you're a good friend, a wonderful friend, known him for years, years and years.
Oh, he's a fantastic guy. So that's Friday, the 10th of October at 7 p.m. in the UK. I always have a great show with Peter as well. He's a lovely fella, absolutely genuine guy who you
Yes,
could ever meet.
yes, that's right. Yes, absolutely wonderful guy, smashing guy, and we have such a laugh with him as well too. I mean, we've both been crying with laughter at some of the things that we've spoken about, and it's wonderful to bring that real humaneness into a conversation. So it's incredible.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. Well, thank you, Philip. It's been wonderful as always.
Thank
You
you.
take care.
Yes. Thank you very much. And you too, Bob, and it's been an honour to come on your show. Thank you very much
Send my
indeed.
regards to Ronnie.
I will indeed.
I'm
Yes, yeah.
thinking about it and I'm going to send him loads of healing.
Thank you so much, Bob. I'd love that very much indeed. Thank you.